Chavez, painter and sculptor who has been living in Woodstock since the mid-40s or late 40s, would you say, Ed? When was that you came here?
1945
yeah.
was the year.
And he'll be showing slides of his paintings, sculpture, and possibly some prints. Or
I'm sure a little of everything that I've done practically.
Okay.
Myths require the use, not the use of our reasoning, but our instincts. Something of that sort of paraphrasing. And another, Octavio Paz, the Mexican poet, who said that poetry transcends both history and language. And I like to think that both of those dictum apply to art, at least to my way of thinking and my way of working. Can you hear all right at the back?
Yeah.
Having said that, it follows that I don't like to talk about art generally, and I certainly don't like to talk about my work. So here I go talking about it now. And I might say a few remarks about my method of working, or the way I work, or the way I think. I like to think of art as a myth, or a piece of magic, phenomenon. And I think of it very much as Octavio Paz described poetry, as something that transcends both language and history. Because of that, I try as much as possible to keep my mind open, to not to let history of art interfere in what I'm doing, nor what I've learned, nor what I think when I'm not working. To put it another way, I like to think that I work largely by instinct. And if there's any reasoning or any analysis, it's done after the fact rather than in the process of painting or sculpting. I tend to use the word painting as a general term. I mean painting or sculpture, art in general. I've often had an argument when I make that statement that I work principally by instinct. I certainly like to try to work basically by instinct. I like to have my work develop from the material that it starts from. And I chose slides, not chronologically exactly, but I did show I'm showing a few early slides just to illustrate a certain progress, so you can see the progress in my work over the years, and to try to illustrate what I'm saying, that the process by which I work. I like to, everything, whether it's a painting or a drawing or a piece of sculpture, to develop out of the material, particular material that I'm working from, which doesn't mean necessarily that I, if I'm doing a watercolor or a print, that I think in terms of the print medium and the technicalities of it, but simply that if I'm working on a lithograph on a stone, the stone itself is a part of the drawing, and it should be anyway in the lithograph, but it's important for me to have the feel and the quality of the stone and of the wax crayon, the lithographic crayon. Or if it's a piece of bronze, the bronze itself determines what happens. And when I start working, whether it's in a painting, or on a drawing, or a piece of sculpture, I do sketches beforehand, but they're very quick, brief sketches. I do thousands of them. I have drawers full of little sketchbooks. But I seldom refer to them. Having done them, they are finished in themselves, and when I go to the canvas or to a piece of bronze, that becomes the medium then, and not the previous idea. Sometimes the idea remains, the original concept remains, very often it disappears completely. In other words, it's a process for me, a process of evolution from the moment I look at a piece of canvas or touch it or pick up a piece of wax to do something to cast from. It's an evolutionary process that in which I'm discovering what I'm doing at the time that I do it. I prefer not to have a preconceived idea of what the result is going to be. I prefer to have it develop. So I'll start with power. Now this first slide was done in 1941. And just to show you the development of the work, it's one of the earliest things that I could find. I started painting on the government projects, which meant that I was doing murals. And this followed the projects. This happened to be have been done in the Army. It's a mural 40 feet long and about 20 feet high, painted in casein, not casein, in egg tempera on board. And as you can see, it's very illustrative, very representational. On the project days, I was working, as many people did, doing regional painting. I was interested in the farm and the country of the West. So this was a sort of an outcome of my early murals on the projects. That's the finished mural. And jumping from that to this, which was an interval of about 10 years. And this was influenced by having been in Italy and seeing the mosaics, and the work was influenced by the broken facets of color. By showing these just to show the effects, the things that have influenced me and affected me. I was still working in a semi-representational, you can still see what I was looking at. And we jumped from there to quite a long period. I don't remember the exact date of this, but this would be probably in the late 50s and 60s. And now, although it's become more abstract, but it's still an outcome of what I experienced and what I saw in the Southwest. But here begins the principal influences which have remained up to the present have been natural formations, the elements I'm very much aware of and interested and moved by, the wind, rain, storms, thunder, lightning, rock formations, and that has remained up to the present, which started just about the time that this painting was done. This was specifically influenced by the rock formations, the rock cliff dwellings in the Southwest. And I think you can probably recognize it, even as abstract as it is. The colors are also very strongly influenced by the Southwest.
What's the medium?
This is when I began to work in acrylics. This was acrylic. Here too, the natural elements. I don't remember the title of this, but you can recognize, I think, a landscape with a sunset and the flow of water and or movement of, or the grass blowing in the wind. These are all just things that influence me and move me and become a part of the painting, no matter how abstract it is. This is I called Aurora, again having to do with the natural elements, sky. I did a series of paintings that were similar to this, that were influenced by waves and the water flowing on rocks on the beach and the coast. If you want to look at any of these longer than I showed them, I don't know if I'm going too fast or too slow, but this also very strongly influenced by Southwest themes, both in color and in the interaction with forms.
Is that acrylic too?
This is acrylic also. Oh, no, this was, I beg your pardon, this was underpainted in acrylic and overpainted in oil. And a part of the richness that it has to do with the fact that I did paint with oil as opposed to acrylics, which I find sometimes a little limiting in that sense. There's a lushness about oil paint that I think, in a richness, sometimes that you can't get with acrylic. And this was painted, underpainted in acrylic and overpainted with oil.
You don't think it's abstract enough for you?
Oh, it's not a question of abstract or not abstract. One of the other very important, I'll think of things that are important to me. I don't like to make any rules. I don't think you can make rules about painting, about what is art, for example. They have the various people working in various modes now, and often you'll hear the statement, well, yes, but is it really art? Anything is art that means something to you. I mean, there are no rules, no limitations to art. I don't think there shouldn't be. Yes.
When you started that painting, did you, with acrylic, did you intend to finish it with acrylic, or did you change the depth?
You mean having painted over with oil?
Yes.
No, you can't paint it. You can't paint acrylic over oil, but you can paint oil over acrylic.
When you began with the acrylic, did you intend it to be an acrylic painting?
No. There was a period when I was working, when I started working with acrylics, when I wasn't satisfied with the quality I was getting, and I would often revert to oil, which I used originally when I first started painting.
How did you use the underpainting? Did you use like complementary colors?
No, just as though it were a finished painting. I just started painting with acrylics, and at a certain point, the acrylics didn't do what I wanted them to do, so I would resort to oil.
It was just the same color in the oil that you had intended?
The same colors, yes. There was no underpainting and overpainting. It was simply a continuation of the process. Yes?
I'm sorry, are you saying there was no drawing previous to the painting itself?
Well, I draw sometimes, I almost always draw, but the drawing is really, again, just the first part of the painting. I start drawing and then start painting. It isn't a drawing which I then paint. No, it's simply a continuous process.
Was that done on location, or is that done?
No, I never paint on location. Never. It's always in the studio, and it's always at a great distance divorced from whatever the original idea was. And this, after working in color for a long time, I reached a point where I got, I guess, tired of color, or color was becoming too important or taking over, and I decided to just do black and whites, and I did a series of black and whites, of which this was one of the last ones that I did, and it was, and I used charcoal and acrylics. Sometimes just a slight suggestion of color, you can note a little blue in there, but basically they were black and whites. Again, you can see how important the elements are to me. Then at a certain point, I became interested in, because of this interest in natural elements, it just sort of developed into doing a series of moonscapes. And this was one of them. I will show you several of them. It could have been the Earth seen by the astronauts, but I called them moonscapes. And this is a combination of this moonscape idea and the Southwest natural forms, cacti, cactus forms, thorns, And I name all those things only to try to get you to see what it is that I was working with. I don't think of them consciously, or seldom do, when I'm working. All these were all acrylic present. These slides aren't not always the best. I've tried to mask them off, but there's a little light leaking in which is obtrusive. This also was underpainted in acrylic and overpainted with oil. I think you can tell often there's an added neatiness to the quality that you get. If you have any questions as I go along, don't be afraid to interrupt.
Are these on canvas generally or board?
I always paint on canvas, yes. I had my first paintings on the project days, I painted on board, but now I paint on canvas. This was the last of the Moon series. And here it began to get a little too complicated again. Color was sort of getting too busy and the forms broken up too much. I got disturbed. This was only one example. Some of them got even more complex, and I was disturbed by this. I think the next slide shows this. I decided that I was going to, I went to Utah and to New Mexico and decided to get away from all the busyness of this, of color and forms and shapes, and to simplify. And these were all acrylic, only acrylic. This had gold leaf in the sun, just in case you're interested in the materials. This was another of the same series, all very simple forms. And gold leaf in the upper part of the sun. And a series of rainbows, which I did at the same time, also very flat and very simple. I just wanted to get rid of all the...
About what year?
This was 1970, 71.
Do you think you were influenced by the pop movement in choosing the rainbow?
No. As a matter of fact, now people have commented on these paintings, referring to the other people, the many people who have been doing rainbows. This was, I had not seen any rainbows at the time that I started. I was not, so I was not influenced by it. No. But now it seems it's so commonplace that it seems as though they must have been influenced by it. No, it was pure, the influence was purely the New Mexico landscape.
Where are these paintings?
Some of them are sold, some of them I have. And you'll see a switch. Another thing that I say that I like my work to be an ongoing process, an evolution. And I find that too, and I said that I think it's a work of magic or phenomenon. It's an adventure. It should be an adventure for me personally. So that I like to whatever happens when that change from the previous paintings to these very flat paintings, it's something that I need. I need to change. I need to adventure. I need to try something different, something new. And you'll see it as we go along in the work. This was one of the last of that rainbow series. Here it's becoming again, getting a little more complex, and you'll see the development in later, more complex things.
When you speak of a series, Ed, how long would you estimate a series would
A
go
series?
on? 5 years,
that's,
5 months?
well, that's an interesting question, not in terms of time. It can be sometimes just a week, it can be sometimes years. But it's interesting, it's a good question because a series means to me, I don't know how it's used normally in art, but to me it means that it's not just one painting. I'm not interested in just this painting. I'm interested in a group of paintings or in the development of work. A year's work is to me, or a week's work, depending on how long it lasts, is the painting. It's not just into each individual thing. So a series means to me that it's a continuing process that goes from one painting to the next. They're not individual paintings, it's a group of work. Did you?
I was going to ask if there was some significance to the bisected triangle that you see on many of them base of the painting.
I don't know what you mean.
Yes, there was like a highway.
Oh, well, again, that's simply from the New Mexico landscape or the western landscape where you're driving down the road and the road just disappears off into space. It's purely a...
That's beautiful.
Down there too. Yeah.
These were charcoal. They're very much, I didn't mention this, these are very much influenced, were very much influenced. I was conscious of the fact that they were influenced by Indian art. If any of you that are familiar with Indian art, this especially.
This is on paper.
These are on paper, yes, charcoal on paper.
Was it all Indian art or specific for
Excuse me.
Is that a specific Indian art?
No, just generally the forms that the Indians often use in their design. There's the highway again. And along with the natural elements and natural forms, natural wildlife also interests me, and especially the idea of flight. I've done several flight. Birds, wings, feathers. I've done Icarus, for example. Just the idea of flying, and sometimes even suggestions of airplane. But this is butterfly and rainbow, as you can see. But you'll see several. Here's another butterfly. This is a lithograph that is called Green River, which is an area that has lots of fossil formations in it, which I'm interested in. And I won't be any more specific than that, except that it was instigated by digging for fish fossils in Wyoming.
When did you do that?
This was let's see. It doesn't have a date on it. This would have been about 1960, I think. This was done in Paris at what are the presses? The two Muralist. And here's another one. The sun again.
What's the title of that? Is it not
Sun. I did Sun 1. Yes, this was another one of the
And
series.
that was an acrylic? Was it an acrylic?
No, that was a lithograph. That was a lithograph. Now this is coming up to the present. You may have seen this in one of my shows, where I've started going back to drawings again, using black and white, but using now graphite with a I forget what the stuff is called. Oh, I'll think of it. Anyway, it's graphite drawing.
Did that have a title?
A bouquet.
You said it was coming up to the present. How present?
Well, this was about 2 years ago. I think this is, who's dated? I can't see. But this is a continued. I mean, these two are a continuation of what or the beginnings of what I'm doing now, which has been going on for about 2 years.
And they make it a graphite and wash? How they make it a graphite?
Graphite.
Plus.
Oh, acetone.
Acetone.
They use acetone with graphite to create the wash with the washes. An owl. Again, the winged figures, the flying figures. And this is coming as of the past couple of years. This is the beginning of the work that I'm doing at the moment, which is again going back to the Southwest themes having to do with the natural formations, the river running down a canyon.
What year is that?
This is 1980, that one. An Indian theme. I did a series of Indians. About the first really representational work that I have done in years.
What mediums did you use?
This is still graphite and acetone. I think I used a little charcoal in this one.
Is this a particular Indian?
No, just Indian. I won't say anything about these unless you have questions. This was painted in acrylic. And this is another series of storms I've done over the years, off and on, paintings or drawings of storms, the idea of storm. This is another one of the same series.
Mr. Chavez, what are the size of these paintings?
These are approximately the size that they are on the screen, these particular ones. Some have been larger. I paint quite often up to 72 inches, 60 by 70. But these are just about that size. This is one of the last paintings I did this year. A storm cloud again. And this is about 70 inches high. Some of you have probably seen this. This is another one, the latter one's going back to winged figures again, or butterfly, or moth. And bouquet again. You saw the bouquet drawing earlier, which interests me not as a bouquet specifically, but just the combination, the excitement of forms that happen within the bouquet. This is acrylic also. Now we go to sculpture. I said that the material is very important to me, and because of it, I work in various mediums. This is one of the earliest of my sculptures when I first started doing sculpture. And you'll see as I progress through the sculpture that the particular medium, or the way I used the medium, that particular medium, determined the form itself. Here I was using copper rods brazed with bronze. And that determined kind of the thing that resulted. In terms of the subject matter, it was a rainforest idea. I was in Brazil for a year and in Trinidad, and I was always fascinated by jungle forms. And this was one of the outcome of that fascination with Another very early one. And here the flat sheets of copper brazed with bronze determines again the different form. What year? This would have been in the 50s.
What are the colored areas?
The colored areas are acid, just various acid washes.
How large is this center?
The piece is just about that size, and the previous one also. And I show you these early ones simply to show you the different, how important the material is to me. Here I'm using brazing or welding rods and steel, so it comes out a different kind of a form altogether.
When is that?
This was about 1960, I think.
Were there many using these rods and color?
I think they were. I don't remember specifically. Well, of course, yeah, there were periods when people were discovered doing welding. So, this, by the way, is these, and much of my sculpture that I do now is meant as a scale model for monumental works. The concept I had was something about 14 feet high, for example, an outdoor sculpture.
Was it executed?
No, money. It takes money to do them. No, that's why much of what I do are scale models, because I can do the small ones and then hopefully get a commission out of it. This was again, going back to nature, chrysalis was the idea for this, or a butterfly being born, spreading its wings. This also is meant to be a large-scale thing, approximately 15 feet high or so. In welded steel rods. Then going to a different material, flat steel, welded steel, and the material again, or the particular material, determined what the result was. And I did a series of these, butterflies again, or winged figures, butterflies specifically. These also are meant to be approximately 6 or 7 feet high. This one I did do in full scale, which was about 7 feet high.
Where is it from?
It's some people that live up on Ohio Mountain. Berkowitz, I think, is their name. It was painted, partly painted there, the final one was finished one. This one I have at home, which isn't finished yet, but that is full scale, about 8 feet high.
When is that?
That was, I would guess it was about 1979 or so, 78. Yeah.
Did you scale up the thickness of the material and you scale up the design to get the same feel?
In this case, it's an accurate, well, in this one I didn't do in small scale. I just started working directly on the piece. The previous one I did, this one I did in this scale, which was about 2 feet high, and the large one was done exactly to scale, including, yeah, the thickness of the material.
So it has the same structural...
Yeah, right. This one I started working the way I described it. I just started welding and cutting pieces and putting them together, almost like doing it.
You do all of the work yourself without assistance?
No, this one I did welded myself. The previous one, the finished, I do the scale models myself, but the finished pieces I turned over to somebody else. This one I did do myself. I am working on myself. That's the finished piece, by the way, which is about 7 feet high. Finished before painting, because I painted some of the panels.
What paint do you use?
I use Rust-Oleum outdoor bridge paint. another material going to wood, and it becomes a totally different thing again, just by the nature of by the fact of the material that I'm working with.
What kind of wood do you use?
Black walnut, simply because I was available at the time, or you can find it once in a while, and it's such beautiful wood to work with. Now, going to the castings, which is what I've been doing the past 2 or 3 years. I started actually in 1961 when this was done, and I made several small pieces and then dropped it for a while, and then I went back to it about 3 years ago. This was one of the first pieces I did. But the casting, again, the bronze casting material determines a totally different form altogether. Yes, one of the slides I'll show you will show the wax as compared to the finished one. These are all done in wax and in the so-called lost wax process. Here's the Icarus figure, the winged figure again. And a back view of it. This is only about 8 inches high. Again, a scale model. The finished piece is meant to be about this size. I've never done it, but that's...
How did you photograph it look so monumental?
Well, because they're meant to be monumental, so I try to photograph them so that they look that way. This is meant to be just about this size, but the model is only about 8 inches high. There's the Icarus figure again. And then I began, speaking of influences, the structures, the Western structure, mine structures, and the trestle bridges have always fascinated me. And I started using forms that suggested the structure, the old mine shafts, or the old trestle bridges, and combining that with the sun, which I so often use. This also is a small scale model, which is meant to be about 8 feet high. But any of you that know about casting, I once priced one of these, and it was something like $50,000 to have it cast in its final form. I'm going to do some of these, by the way, in wood, which I can do myself. All of these are meant to be monumental outdoor pieces. That's the back view of the same piece. This is the wax, by the way. It's not the finished piece. This is meant to be, again, about 10 feet high, which would make it about 20 or so, 25 feet long, wide. There's another one where some of the Indian design enters into it again. And these I will execute in wood as soon as I get around to it, in full scale. This is one I like very much, not in very good focus. This is intended to be about 14 feet high. Combining the structural wood trestle forms with the sun again. Now the most recent ones have become much more fluid, and this goes back to my birth. My background is very important to me, where I came from, where I grew up. And I've always been very much moved by memories that I have when I was a child in New Mexico. And these really few that I'm showing you now are come from cloud formations that I recall as a child in New Mexico. They were very fluid, floating forms, and sun. Another one, natural formations.
You make your own slides?
Yes, I do. Some of them aren't so hot. That's the front and back view of the same piece. Cloud formations and the old mine structures again.
Do I remember you told me that you thought these were influenced by the look of worn leather also?
No, somebody has often commented about the color that I use on them, that it resembled worn leather.
But not the form?
Not the form, no. No, the forms are really from cloud formations or growing forms, cabbage leaves, or a seed bursting open and growing. The growth of plant life, for example, and floating clouds. Those are the elements that interest me in these particular ones.
You work every day?
Do I work every day? Yeah. When I'm working, I work every day. When I'm not working, I don't work at all every day. All these are meant to be large scale. At least life size, man size.
Do you ever think of 40 feet?
Of what?
40 feet instead of 8? Do you ever think higher than 8 feet? You keep saying
Oh yes, no, so a couple of them have been 14 feet high, for example. No, generally speaking, just a couple of feet above head height is something that I feel good with, yeah. Bird forms again. And these are the present, right up to the present. You can see the forms are getting a lot more fluid. This is Icarus again, but much more abstract than the previous Icarus that you saw.
How many of these small bronzes would you estimate there are?
Gosh, I don't know. Maybe rough guess would be about 20 to 25. This is another view of the same one, of the same Icarus figure. Flames and feathers and wings, broken wings, and flight. This is the wax for the one that you will see next. This is about 2 feet high, just about the size that's on the screen there, a little smaller. And that's the original wax from which I cast this piece, which is the bronze.
Did a black clay work well, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The black wax?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I almost colored this in black and then changed my mind.
So we see the wax again.
Yeah. Of course, the bronze wouldn't have that same quality because there's a translucency in the wax that you don't get in. It becomes much more rigid somehow or other. And bird forms again, wings.
Is this the one that won the major award down in Silver Line?
It's Silver Line, yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece.
This is another view of it. And this is the last one, I think, which was one of the last pieces I did. And this is, I call Geyser. But the titles are just meant to be suggestive, not specific. This piece is just about that size. And that is it.